The doorbell rang at 9:47 p.m., shattering the peaceful quiet of my home. Through the security monitor, I could see them, my parents, standing on my doorstep for the first time in 10 years. My father clutched his chest, his once towering frame now hunched and frail. My mother's designer clothes were wrinkled, her face stripped of the makeup she'd never been seen without. "Who is it, Mom?" Lucas called from upstairs. "No one," I replied automatically, my heart hammering against my ribs. 10 years. 10 years of silence after they'd thrown me out of their lives for choosing my unborn child over their precious reputation. And now here they were, looking lost and broken on the doorstep of the home I'd built without them. I opened the door, allowing the cool night air to rush in, carrying with it the ghosts of my past. "Rebecca," my mother whispered, her eyes widening as she took in my silk pajamas and the elegant foyer behind me. "Elizabeth," I replied, using her first name deliberately. "Harold." My father winced at the formality. What an unexpected surprise after a decade of silence. "You look," my mother trailed off. "Successful?" I supplied. "Funny how that happened without your help." "Please," my father spoke, his voice rough with exhaustion. "We have nowhere else to go." I stood frozen in the doorway, remembering another doorway 10 years ago when I'd been the one asking for help and they'd been the ones shutting the door. "Mom?" Lucas appeared behind me in his Star Wars pajamas, looking impossibly young and vulnerable. My parents' eyes locked onto him as if seeing a ghost. "Is that—" My mother's hand flew to her mouth. "Your grandson," I finished. "Yes, the one you never wanted to meet." "I'm Lucas," my son said simply, coming to stand beside me. "You're the ones who kicked my mom out." My mother flinched. My father's face went ashen. 10 years ago, I'd been a pregnant 32-year-old marketing executive begging my parents for understanding. Now I was the CEO of my own company, and they were the ones begging for shelter. Life had a poetic way of coming full circle. "Where's Andrew?" I asked, referring to my brother. "He took what was left and disappeared." My mother's voice cracked. "After the fraud investigation started." Of course he had. Classic Andrew. I looked at my son, this wonderful, mature boy I'd raised alone, then back at my parents, once pillars of high society, now financial and social pariahs. "If they're staying here," Lucas said firmly, "I want to be part of the decision." In that moment, standing in the doorway between my present and my past, I knew whatever I decided would change everything. Not just for them, but for me and Lucas too. Flashback the day everything changed. 10 years earlier, I wore a cream-colored blouse to my parents' Beacon Hill mansion, the collar still damp from where I'd wiped my mouth after morning sickness. At 32, I thought I had my life mapped out. Executive position at a prestigious marketing firm, my own brownstone in Cambridge, and a relationship I believed would last forever with James, a venture capitalist with the right pedigree and connections. Then 2 pink lines appeared on a pregnancy test, and James disappeared faster than summer in New England. "You're what?" My mother's teacup clattered against its saucer. My father's Wall Street Journal lowered slowly, his reading glasses reflecting the afternoon sun streaming through the bay windows of their formal living room. "I'm pregnant," I repeated, my voice steadier than my hands. "And before you ask, yes, I'm keeping it." The silence that followed felt like a noose tightening around my neck. My brother, Andrew, slouched deeper into the leather armchair across from me, suddenly fascinated by his phone screen. He'd always been their golden child, Harvard Business School, perfect marriage to a senator's daughter, job at father's investment firm. I'd been the disappointment, choosing marketing over law, remaining unmarried at 32. "This is unacceptable." My father finally spoke, his voice carrying that familiar tone that broke no argument, the same voice he used in boardrooms and with difficult clients. "You will terminate this situation, or you will no longer be welcome in this house." "Harold," mother whispered, but there was no real protest in her voice. She'd spent her entire life cultivating the perfect image, serving on the right charity boards, hosting the right people for dinner. An unwed pregnant daughter didn't fit that carefully curated tableau. I placed my hands protectively over my still flat stomach. "I can't do that. I won't." Growing up in the Tucker household meant understanding the invisible lines that were never to be crossed. Family reputation was paramount. Appearances mattered above all else. My father had clawed his way up from middle-class obscurity to become one of Boston's financial elite, and my mother had transformed herself from a schoolteacher's daughter to the queen of Beacon Hill society. They'd sacrificed too much to allow their daughter's indiscretion to tarnish what they'd built. Then you leave us no choice. Father stood up, his 6-foot frame casting a shadow over me. We've given you everything. The best education, opportunities, connections. And this is how you repay us? By becoming an unwed mother. I need help, I admitted, hating how my voice cracked. Just until I figure things out, please. You're asking us to support your poor choices? Mother's perfectly manicured nails drummed against her teacup. What will people say? Who cares what people say? I shot back. I'm your daughter. A daughter who should know better, father cut in. Andrew, leave us. My brother stood without a word, avoiding my eyes as he shuffled out. Some support system he was. Though I wasn't surprised. Andrew had always been careful to stay on the right side of our parents' approval. I've already lost my position, I continued, desperate now. The morning sickness had made it impossible to keep up with the demanding hours at the firm, and while I hadn't been officially terminated, the writing was on the wall. I just need a little help until… Until what? Father's voice rose. Until you've completely destroyed our family's reputation? Until you're another welfare statistic? I'll pay you back, I promised. Every cent. I just need enough to. Father slammed his hand on the coffee table, making Mother jump. You made your choice. Now live with it. When you realize what a mistake you're making, you'll come crawling back. But until then, you are no longer welcome here. Mother, I turned to her, tears streaming down my face. Please. She looked away, dabbing at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. Listen to your father, Rebecca. I stood on shaky legs, my cream blouse suddenly feeling like it was made of lead. So that's it. 32 years of being your daughter, and this is what breaks us? You broke us, father corrected. Now get out. I walked to the door, each step feeling like I was wading through concrete. As I reached for the handle, Mother's voice stopped me. When you come to your senses, she said softly, we'll be here. I turned back one last time, memorizing their faces. Father's stern disapproval, Mother's artificial grief, and through the dining room doorway, Andrew's guilty expression as he pretended not to watch. No, I said, my voice suddenly clear and strong. When I succeed, because I will succeed, don't you dare try to take credit for the person I become. You lost that right today. Flashback, the decision. That night in my Cambridge apartment, I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by financial statements and unpaid bills. My savings would last 3 months at most. The baby would arrive in 7. Outside, rain lashed against the windows, and the neon sign from the diner across the street cast an eerie blue glow over my makeshift office. I pressed my palms against my temples, trying to quell the panic rising in my chest. How had I gotten here? I'd done everything right, graduated summa cum laude from Wellesley, climbed the corporate ladder, saved diligently. One unplanned pregnancy, and suddenly I was toxic. My phone buzzed with a text from Andrew. They'll come around. Just do what they want. I blocked his number without responding. It's just you and me now, little one, I whispered, placing a hand on my stomach. But I promise you this. We won't just survive. We'll thrive. I pulled my laptop closer and opened a new document. If my parents thought I'd come crawling back, they were sorely mistaken. I'd built successful marketing campaigns for dozens of companies. It was time to build one for myself. As I typed late into the night, sketching out the foundations of what would become my own digital marketing consultancy, I felt something shift inside me and not the baby. It was too early for that. It was something else, something harder, stronger. One day, I promised my unborn child as the first rays of dawn filtered through my window, they'll regret throwing us away. I didn't know then how prophetic those words would become, or how 10 years later, they would come back to haunt my family in ways none of us could have imagined. Flashback of the building blocks. You're charging what? Sarah nearly choked on her coffee. 6 months pregnant, I sat across from her in a quiet corner of Caf Nero, my portfolio spread between us. I'd known Sarah from my previous firm. She was now marketing director at MediaBridge, one of Boston's top agencies. 200 per client, I repeated, suddenly defensive. Rebecca. She set down her cup firmly. These results are worth at least 1,000 per client minimum. I stared at her, my mind racing. $1,000 per client would mean. You're not selling social media management, Sarah continued, flipping through my portfolio with practiced efficiency. You're selling results, Roy, growth, actual business outcomes. Look at what you did for that boutique: 200% engagement increase, 45% boost in online orders. That's worth far more than you're charging. No one would pay that much for someone working from their dining table, I argued, unconsciously resting a hand on my growing belly. Wrong? Sarah grabbed my notebook and started writing. You need a proper business name, a website, and packages. Tier your services: basic, premium, enterprise. Create case studies from these early successes. I can't afford. I know a web developer who owes me a favor. She waved off my protest. And MediaBridge is looking to outsource some social media work for our smaller clients. If you can handle it, I'll recommend you. I stared at her, my throat tight. Why are you helping me? Sarah's pen stopped moving. Her expression softened as she looked at me. Because 8 years ago, I was you. Different circumstances, same terror. She pushed the notebook toward me. Someone helped me. Now I'm helping you. But you have to help yourself first. Are you in? That night, after Sarah left, I worked until 3 a.m., building my business plan. My back ached, my feet were swollen, but for the first time since that day in my parents' house, I felt hope, of fragile and tentative, but hope nonetheless. Growing up, my father had always told me that success was the result of strategy, not luck. The world doesn't give handouts, Rebecca, he'd say during our Sunday business lessons. I'd resented those lessons then, but now, I drew on every piece of knowledge he'd imparted, every trick he'd taught me about positioning and value proposition. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was using his own teachings to prove him wrong. Flashback: the first victory. I'm pregnant, not incompetent, I told my reflection, adjusting my blazer over my 7-month bump. My first major client meeting was at Back Bay's newest boutique hotel, and I'd arrived early to review my proposal one last time. Ms. Tucker? A woman in a sharp Armani suit approached my table. I'm Claire from Bloom Cosmetics. Sarah spoke highly of you. The meeting started rough. I could see the doubt in Claire's eyes when she saw my condition. It was the same look I'd seen countless times over the past months, that subtle reassessment, the mental recalculation of my competence based solely on my pregnancy. But as I walked her through my strategy and showed her results from previous clients, something shifted. These numbers are impressive, she admitted, studying my proposal. But I have concerns about your availability. I understand, I said, my hand steady as I took a sip of water. That's why I've built a contingency plan into the proposal. You'll notice I've included backup support and guaranteed response times, regardless of my personal circumstances. Claire looked surprised, then smiled. You've really thought this through. I have to, I said simply. Failure isn't an option for me. 2 hours later, I had my first major contract, worth more than all my previous clients combined. As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mother heard you're doing some computer work. Hope you're being realistic about your situation. Andrew. I deleted the message without responding. When I reached my apartment, I settled at my kitchen table and opened my laptop. My son kicked, and I smiled, placing my hand on my belly. See that, little one? Mommy just landed her first big fish, and trust me, there are plenty more in the sea. Looking at my reflection in the laptop screen, I barely recognized myself. The scared woman in the cream blouse was gone. In her place was someone new, someone stronger, someone determined, someone who was just getting started. Present day, the reckoning. Why should we let you stay? I asked my parents as we sat in my living room 10 years later. The modern art on the walls, the expensive furniture, the view of Boston through floor to ceiling windows all testified to what I'd built without them. The banks took everything, Mother explained, her hands twisting in her lap. The house, the cars. Andrew had power of attorney. He. He did exactly what you trained him to do. I finished for her. Take whatever he wanted without considering the consequences. We made mistakes, Father admitted, and I nearly fell over from shock. He'd never admitted to a mistake in his life. About everything. About you, about Andrew, about what really matters. You abandoned your pregnant daughter because you were worried about your reputation, I said, the old anger rising like bile in my throat. How's that reputation working out for you now? The Tucker investment scandal had been all over the news. Andrew's fraudulent schemes had wiped out retirement accounts, college funds, charitable foundations. My brother, their golden child, had stolen millions and fled the country, leaving our parents to face the music and criminal investigations. Rebecca, please, Mother begged. We know we don't deserve your help. You're right, you don't. Then why did you let us in? Father asked quietly. I looked at Lucas, who had been watching the exchange with the intense focus he brought to his advanced math problems. His eyes, so like mine, were thoughtful, assessing. Because my son believes in chances, I said finally, and because I refuse to become what you are, people who turn their backs on family. We can pay you back, Father started, but I held up my hand. No. If you stay here, it's not a loan, it's not an investment, and it comes with conditions. They waited, hardly breathing. First, you will never again question my choices or my parenting. Second, you will treat Lucas with the respect and love he deserves, not because you need something from us, but because he's your grandson. Third, you will get jobs, real jobs, not investment schemes. Mother looked horrified. At our age? My company needs a receptionist, I said coolly. And Father, I hear Walmart is hiring greeters. Lucas snorted, quickly covering it with a cough. The guest house on my property was furnished and ready. I'd bought it as an investment, never imagining it would house my disgraced parents. You can stay there until you get back on your feet. But one step out of line, one hint of your old attitudes, and you're out. Clear? They nodded, looking shell-shocked. Lucas, what do you think? I turned to my son, this wonderful, wise boy I'd raised alone. He studied his grandparents for a long moment. I think everyone deserves a chance to be better. Even them. I hugged him close, breathing in his familiar scent. Then it settled. As they followed Jessica, my VP and right hand, to the guest house, Mother turned back. Rebecca, thank you. Don't thank me yet, I replied. Proving you've changed will be harder than anything you've ever done. After they left, Lucas and I stood looking out at the city lights. Are we doing the right thing? I asked him, suddenly uncertain. You always say success is the best revenge, he replied thoughtfully. Maybe forgiveness is even better. I kissed his forehead, marveling at his wisdom. When did you get so smart? Must be genetics, he grinned. From my mom's side, obviously. Flashback the climb. The years following Lucas's birth were a blur of sleepless nights, pitch meetings, and constant growth. Every milestone my son reached was matched by a milestone in my business. His first step coincided with my first office space. His first day of preschool aligned with my 5th employee hire. His entry into elementary school marked my company's expansion to a 2nd floor. By the time Lucas was 5, Tucker Digital Marketing had 20 employees and a reputation for delivering results. By the time he was 8, we'd moved into our own building in the heart of Boston's business district. I never took a handout. I never asked for help from my family. Every dollar was earned through strategy, determination, and countless 18-hour days. And through it all, my parents' silence was deafening. No birthday cards for Lucas, no Christmas calls, not even a note acknowledging our existence. Andrew would occasionally send cryptic texts, usually when he was drunk, alternating between apologies and accusations. They still ask about you, he wrote once, around year 3. No, they don't, I replied. If they cared, they'd reach out themselves. He didn't respond, and I didn't expect him to. Andrew had always taken the path of least resistance. Standing up to our parents would require a backbone, I wasn't sure he possessed. I dated occasionally, but men tended to fall into two categories: those intimidated by my success and those who saw me as a challenge to be conquered. None lasted long. Lucas and my company remained my priorities, and I had little patience for anyone who couldn't understand that. Sarah remained my closest friend and confidant, joining my company as Chief Strategy Officer in year 4. You know, she told me over late night strategy sessions. For someone who claims to have moved on from her family, you sure spend a lot of energy proving them wrong. I'm not proving anything to them, I insisted. I'm proving something to myself. But in quiet moments, I knew there was truth to her words. Every award, every new client, every expansion, part of me wondered if my parents knew, if they regretted their choice, if they ever thought about the grandson they'd never met. Present day, the family dinner's ready. Lucas called from the kitchen, 3 weeks after my parents had moved into the guest house. He'd insisted on helping prepare the lasagna my mother had taught him to make. I watched as mother set my dining room table with trembling hands. Her company polo shirt, mandatory for all TDM employees, was accessorized with a small pearl pin, her one concession to former elegance. Father sat stiffly in an armchair, still in his Walmart greeter vest, his once commanding presence diminished by polyester and a name tag. We sat down, an awkward rectangle of tension and unsaid words. The lasagna steamed between us like a peace offering. "This is delicious," I admitted after a few bites. Mother beamed at Lucas. "He's a natural in the kitchen," she said, "just like you are at his age. Before you threw me out," I finished silently. "Have you heard from Andrew?" Lucas asked, cutting through the tension with the directness only an 11-year-old could manage. Father's fork clattered against his plate. "Lucas, that's not." "Not what?" "Dinner conversation?" Lucas challenged. "Mom always says we should be honest about hard things." I hid a smile. "My son, the diplomat with a streak of my stubbornness." "The authorities think he's in South America," Father said quietly, "with what's left of the money." "How much?" I asked. 3 million, Mother whispered, "plus whatever he skimmed before." "Before he destroyed hundreds of lives," I finished. "Before he ruined your reputation, the very thing you were so desperate to protect 10 years ago." "Rebecca," Father started, but I wasn't finished. "You know what's ironic? You threw me out because you were worried about what people would think of an unmarried pregnant daughter. Now you're working minimum wage jobs because your golden child committed fraud. Tell me, which scandal was worse?" "We know we were wrong," Mother's voice cracked, "about everything." "Do you?" "Because from where I'm sitting, you're only here because you have no choice. If Andrew hadn't stolen everything, if you weren't facing criminal investigations, would you ever have acknowledged your grandson?" "That's not fair," Father protested. "Fair?" I laughed. "Was it fair to throw out your pregnant daughter? Was it fair to miss 10 years of Lucas's life?" "Mom?" Lucas touched my arm. "They're trying. Are they? Or are they just surviving?" The doorbell rang, cutting through the tension. Through the glass panels, I saw a familiar silhouette. "No," Mother gasped. "It can't be." I opened the door. Andrew stood there, tanned and wearing an expensive suit, looking like he just stepped off a yacht rather than fled the country. "Hey, sis." He grinned. "Heard you're taking in strays these days. You've got some nerve," I said coldly. "Come on, Becca. Family helps family, right? Isn't that why Mom and Dad are here?" "Get out." "Not without my share." He stepped forward. "I know you're loaded now. Consider it payback for all those years they chose you over me." He laughed without humor. "Oh wait, that's right. They didn't choose anyone. Uncle Andrew?" Lucas appeared beside me. Andrew's confidence faltered for a moment. "This must be my nephew." "Hey kid, want to help your uncle out?" I pushed Lucas behind me. "Jessica, call security." "Already did," she replied from the hallway. "And the police." Andrew's smile disappeared. "You wouldn't." "Watch me," I said, hearing sirens in the distance. Some family ties deserve to be cut. Epilogue and new beginnings. And that's why we're here today, I concluded, standing at the podium. The business conference room was packed with aspiring entrepreneurs, all eyes fixed on me. Any questions? I asked, scanning the crowd. A young woman in the front row raised her hand. How did you find the strength to start over with nothing? I had everything, I replied. I had my son, and I had my determination. Sometimes losing what you thought you needed helps you find what you actually need. Another hand shot up. And your parents? After everything. I glanced at the back of the room, where my mother sat in her company polo shirt, efficiently checking in attendees. My father would be finishing his shift at Walmart soon. He'd been promoted to department manager last month. They're learning, I said. And so am I. Sometimes the hardest person to forgive isn't others, it's yourself. After the session, Lucas met me in my office. Homework spread across my conference table. How'd it go? Good, though I still hate public speaking. Could have fooled me, Jessica said, walking in with coffee. The crowd loved you, especially the part about Andrew. My brother's trial had made headlines. He'd taken a plea deal, trading information about his offshore accounts for a reduced sentence. The recovered money was being returned to the investors he'd defrauded. Mom? Lucas looked up from his math. Grandma asked if we're still on for Sunday dinner. I smiled. Our weekly family dinners had become a tradition over the past few months, not always easy, not always comfortable, but necessary, like lancing a wound, letting the poison out slowly. Yes, but remind her no fancy china this time. Paper plates work just fine. She's trying. Lucas grinned. Yesterday, she actually ate a hot dog from the Walmart cafeteria. Now that's progress. My phone buzzed a text from father. Proud of you today. Your speech reminded me how far we've all come, and how far I still have to go to deserve being your father again. Everything okay? Lucas asked, noticing my expression. Yeah, I showed him the text. Just your grandfather being surprisingly self-aware. He's different now, Lucas observed. They both are. Less stuck up. Amazing what some humble pie can do. And some forgiveness, he added carefully. I walked to my office window, looking out at the city I conquered on my own terms. Forgiveness is earned, not given. They're earning it day by day. Like when Grandma defended you to her old country club friends last week. I turned back to him. How did you know about that? I heard her on the phone. Some lady was gossiping about our family, and Grandma told her she was proud of her daughter who built a business from nothing while raising an amazing grandson. Then she hung up and canceled her membership. My throat tightened. Mother hadn't mentioned that. A knock at my door interrupted us. My parents stood there, looking uncertain. We thought. Mother started. Maybe we could take you both to dinner to celebrate your speech. Walmart cafeteria? I teased. Actually, father cleared his throat. We were thinking that hot dog car you like, the one by the park. I raised an eyebrow. In your designer clothes? We'll manage, mother smiled. Some things are more important than dry cleaning bills. Looking at them, really looking, I saw what Lucas meant. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something softer, more genuine. They weren't the parents who threw me out, just as I wasn't the scared woman in the cream blouse anymore. Okay, I nodded. But I'm Boo. Our treat, father insisted, a hint of his old authority returning, but tempered now with humility. My treat, I counted. Consider it an investment in our future. As we walked to the elevator, Lucas between his grandparents, chattering about his math test, I caught my reflection in the chrome doors. Success was supposed to be my revenge, showing them exactly what they'd thrown away. But maybe the sweetest revenge wasn't in making them see what they'd lost, but in showing them what they could still gain if they were willing to do the work to earn their place in our lives. Mom? Lucas called, holding the elevator. You coming? I joined my family in the elevator, watching the numbers descend. We weren't perfect, we weren't even fully healed, but we were trying, all of us, to build something new from the ashes of what we'd burned. And maybe that was the biggest success story of all. Race you to the hot dog cart. Lucas challenged his grandparents. In these shoes? Mother laughed, then kicked them off, holding them in her hands. Okay, kiddo, you're on. I watched them run across the lobby, my mother in her stocking feet, my father's Walmart badge glinting under the lights, my son's laughter echoing off the marble walls. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's simply living well enough to give second chances, even to those who once denied you yours. The USB drive feels impossibly heavy in my hand. 10 minutes of truth that could destroy a family, my family. Or what's left of it, anyway. Are you sure about this, Sarah? Claire's voice crackles through my phone speaker, concern evident even through the digital distortion. I stare at the projection screen across the ballroom, currently displaying a slideshow of my brother Eric's greatest achievements. His kindergarten graduation, his high school sailing trophies, his MBA ceremony from last month. In none of these carefully curated memories do I appear. Sarah, are you still there? I'm here, I reply, fingers tightening around the small plastic rectangle containing 6 years of meticulously documented betrayal. And yes, I'm sure, through the crowd, I catch my mother's eye. Margaret Miller, respected former educator and pillar of the community, looks at me with a mixture of suspicion and disappointment before quickly turning away to laugh at something one of her country club friends has said. They're about to start the formal presentation. I tell Claire, I should go. Remember what we talked about, Claire says softly. Revenge feels good for a moment, but healing lasts forever. Whatever you decide, I'm here for you. I end the call and take a deep breath. 10 years of being the family disappointment. 10 years of watching them pour everything into Eric while leaving nothing for me. 10 years of keeping every email, recording every conversation, documenting every betrayal. In precisely 5 minutes, the projector operator will take a scheduled break, and I will have my chance to show them exactly what their perfect family looks like from the outside. My cousin Jessica approaches, champagne flute in hand, tension evident in her forced smile. There you are. Your father is about to make his speech. Wouldn't miss it, I say, sliding the USB drive into my pocket. She eyes me nervously. You're not going to cause problems, are you? I smile. That depends entirely on your definition of problems, doesn't it? Flashback of the email. The email sat in my deleted folder for 10 years. I never had the heart to permanently erase it, perhaps because some wounded part of me needed proof that I wasn't crazy, that my parents really did discuss cutting me off as casually as writing off a bad investment. I was at my desk, fresh from my promotion to project lead at Syntex Systems, when the notification from my mother arrived. Eric's MBA celebration is next Saturday. Community Center, 7 p.m. Appropriate attire expected. The first contact in 3 months. And not even a how are you. Just expectations and commands. Typical Margaret. I opened that old email thread, the one I'd found when I was still living at home. The one that had changed everything. Richard, we need to discuss Sarah's situation. She's refusing Stanford and talking about some online program. This isn't what we raised her for. Agreed. Eric needs the extra support for his business school applications anyway. Better to cut our losses now. I'll move her college fund to the LC tomorrow. She can learn independence if that's what she wants so badly. 10 years later, and the word still burned. I'd been 20 then, filled with dreams of building my own path in tech, refusing to follow my mother's insistence on a traditional 4-year university experience. By the time I discovered they'd drained my college fund, money from my grandparents, meant specifically for me, it was too late. The money was gone, redirected to my brother's MBA fund. I thought I'd made peace with it. Built my career from nothing, earned my degree while working full-time, created a life entirely my own. But seeing that invitation, the casual assumption that I would simply show up and play my part in celebrating Eric, reopened wounds I thought had scarred over long ago. My phone rang. Claire Garcia, my former manager at the retail job I'd worked during college, now my closest friend. So, she said when I answered, got the royal summons, did you? I laughed despite myself. How did you know? Jessica called me. Said your mother's been telling everyone you're coming. Of course she was. Appearances matter above all to Margaret Miller. I'm not going, I said firmly. Yes, you are, Claire counted. I could picture her, arms crossed, giving me that no-nonsense look that had gotten me through the darkest days after I left home. You're going to show up looking gorgeous, and you're going to remember something important. What's that? You survived without them. You succeeded without them. And that kills them more than anything else could. At the office, congratulations, Miller. Project lead at 30. That's got to be some kind of record around here. I smiled at my coworker as we gathered in the conference room, a small celebration for my promotion. 5 years at Syntech had finally paid off. My team had brought in the Harris account, a seven-figure deal that would secure jobs for at least 20 people. My boss had called it the most impressive client pitch he'd seen in a decade. Yet somehow, I couldn't fully embrace the moment. My mother's email had seen to that. Speech. Speech. Someone called out. I raised my sparkling water. To the best team in tech, I said. This wasn't my victory, it was ours. As my colleagues applauded, my phone vibrated. Jessica again. Mom says you haven't RSVP'd to Eric's party. You're coming, right? It would look weird if you weren't there. Always about appearances. Later, alone in my office, I pulled out my laptop and opened a folder I hadn't touched in years. Family documentation, I labeled it. Inside were subfolders meticulously organized. Financial manipulation, emotional abuse, public humiliation, Eric's protected failings. I clicked on the last one. Police reports, lawyers' bills, bank transfers. The DUI my brother had gotten 2 years ago that my father had quietly made disappear, with my money, ironically enough. I'd been the only one with liquid assets when Eric called, desperate and afraid. $20,000 from my hard-earned savings, transferred on the promise of repayment that never came. My finger hovered over the delete button. 10 years of evidence. 10 years of pain. Maybe it was time to let it go. Instead, I created a new folder. Presentation. Flashback childhood. Sarah, sit up straight. Do you want everyone to think we don't teach you manners? I was 8 years old, dressed in an uncomfortable frilly dress at one of my mother's countless dinner parties. Eric, just 10, could do no wrong as he charmed the guests with rehearsed jokes and piano recitals. She's just going through a phase, my mother would say whenever I failed to perform to her standards. Not everyone can be like Eric. My father, Richard Miller, self-made real estate magnate, had built his empire from nothing. His own childhood had been marked by poverty, and he determined his children would never know such hardship. But his love language was financial, never emotional. You need to be practical, Sarah. He'd tell me whenever I expressed interest in computers instead of the law career he'd mapped out for me. Technology is just a hobby, not a career for someone of your background. The irony was, I'd inherited his business sense and determination, just aimed in a different direction. But he could never see past the disappointment of me not following his precisely plotted path. Eric had it worse in some ways. While I was written off early, allowing me a strange kind of freedom, he bore the full weight of their expectations. Star athlete, top student, perfect son, the pressure molded him into someone who looked confident on the outside but crumbled when no one was watching. The summer I turned 16, I found him drunk in the pool house, sobbing. I can't do it anymore, Sar, he slurred. I'm not who they think I am. I sat with him until sunrise, listening as he confessed his fears of failure, his anxiety attacks before tests, how he sometimes cheated just to maintain the perfect GPA our parents expected. That was the last real conversation we ever had. The next morning, he acted as if nothing had happened, and when I tried to talk to him about it, he shut me out completely. At the apartment, my apartment was simple but mine, every piece of furniture bought with my own money, every achievement framed on the walls earned through my own effort. I'd spent the week vacillating between deleting all my evidence and turning it into the most devastating presentation possible. Jessica had been texting nonstop. Mom says we're something conservative. Dad's giving a big speech about family legacy. They're getting a projection screen for a slideshow of Eric's achievements. I thought about my own graduation, celebrated with a small dinner with Claire and a few friends from work. No family present. No party. Just me, my diploma, and the knowledge that I'd done it entirely on my own. The night before the party, I sat cross-legged on my bed, laptop open to the presentation I'd been crafting. 10 minutes that would expose every lie, every manipulation, every moment of cruelty they thought I'd forgotten or forgiven. My phone rang. Claire, have you decided? She asked without preamble. I think so, I replied, staring at the screen. They deserve to know what they've done. That's not what I asked, Claire said gently. I asked if you've decided what you need for yourself. Not what they deserve. I was silent for a long moment. I don't know how to let it go. I finally admitted, my voice small. Every time I think I've moved past it, something pulls me right back in. Maybe you're not supposed to let it go, Claire suggested. Maybe you're supposed to look at it differently. What do you mean? Your parents made choices based on their own fears and limitations. That's about them, not you. Eric's been living the life they wanted, not the one he wanted. That's about him, not you. The only person whose choices you control is yourself. I looked at my presentation again. The title slide read, The Truth About the Miller Family. But whose truth was it really? And what did I hope to gain by sharing it? At the family home, 2 days before the party, I found myself doing something I hadn't done in years. Driving up the long, winding driveway to my parents' home. The sprawling Tudor-style house looked exactly as I remembered it, immaculately maintained, imposing. I sat in my car for several minutes, gathering courage. This wasn't part of my plan, but something Claire had said kept echoing in my mind. Before you decide to burn bridges, make sure there's nothing on the other side you might still need. The front door opened before I could knock. My mother stood there, surprise briefly crossing her features before her composed facade returned. Sarah, she said, as if I'd been gone for days rather than years. We weren't expecting you until Saturday. I was in the neighborhood, I lied. Thought I'd stop by. The house smelled the same, lemon furniture polish and the faint scent of the roses my mother grew in her garden. Family photos lined the hallway, charting Eric's growth from toddler to college graduate. I appeared sporadically, usually at the edges, never the focus. Your father's at the office, my mother said, leading me to the kitchen. Would you like tea? The normality of it was jarring, as if there hadn't been years of silence and hurt between us. My room's still upstairs? I asked. Something flickered across her face. Discomfort, perhaps. Of course. Though well, it's been a while. I climbed the familiar stairs, past Eric's room, door open, recently redecorated, clearly still in active use despite him having his own apartment now, to the end of the hall where my childhood bedroom waited. Unlike Eric's room, mine was frozen in time, preserved like a museum exhibit of the daughter they'd written off. The same purple bedspread, the same computer posters on the wall, the same high school textbooks on the shelf. Nothing had been updated or changed since I'd left 10 years ago. I sat on the edge of the bed, running my hand over the quilt my grandmother had made. The last gift she'd given me before she died, the same grandmother who'd set aside the college fund my parents had redirected to Eric. My eyes fell on a photo I'd forgotten, tucked into the frame of my mirror. Eric and me at the beach, maybe 12 and 14, arms slung around each other, laughing at some forgotten joke. Before expectations and disappointments had created a chasm between us. I picked it up, studying our faces. We had the same eyes, the same chin, the same potential. When I came back downstairs, my mother was waiting with tea, sitting primly at the kitchen island. Your room is exactly as you left it, I said, taking the seat across from her. Yes, well, she fussed with her teacup. We weren't sure what you'd want us to do with it. 10 years, and they hadn't even packed up my childhood things. As if my departure had been so absolute, they couldn't even reimagine the space. Mom, I said, the word feeling strange on my tongue after so long. Why did you invite me to Eric's party? She looked startled by the directness of the question. Your family, of course. Am I? Because it hasn't felt that way for a very long time. Her hands trembled slightly as she set down her cup. Sarah, I know things haven't been ideal between us. But appearances matter, I finished for her. Yes, I know. They always have. That's not fair, isn't it? You and Dad took my college fund, money Grandma left specifically for me, and gave it to Eric. You told everyone I was throwing my life away on a fake degree. You've spent 10 years acting as if I'm the family embarrassment. Her face paled. How did you know about the college fund? I almost laughed. Of all the things I'd said, that was what she focused on. I saw the emails, Mom. I know everything. For a moment, I thought she might deny it. Instead, she sighed, suddenly looking every one of her 58 years. Your father and I thought we were doing what was best, she said quietly. Eric needed the structure of a traditional education. You were always so independent, so sure of yourself. We thought you'd be fine. And was I? Do you even know? Have you ever asked? She looked away. Jessica says you're doing well at some computer company. I'm a project lead at Syntax Systems. I just brought in the largest account in the company's history. I have my own apartment, a career I love, and friends who actually care about me. No thanks to your dad. Then why are you here? She asked, a hint of the old sharpness returning. If you've done so well without us, why come back at all? It was a good question. Why had I kept that email? Why had I documented every slight, every betrayal? Why was I still carrying this weight after all these years? Because you're still my family, I said finally. And I needed to understand if there was anything left worth saving. At the party, the community center ballroom glittered with fairy lights and champagne fountains, a Pinterest board come to life. My conservative black dress felt appropriate yet plainly less expensive than the designer outfits surrounding me. I'd arrived early, the USB drive away in my clutch bag, still undecided. My father spotted me first, surprise evident in his raised eyebrows. Sarah, he said, approaching cautiously. You came. I said I would. Up close, I could see how much he'd aged. The successful businessman who'd once seemed invincible now looked tired, with deep lines around his eyes and a slight stoop to his shoulders I didn't remember. Your mother mentioned you stopped by the house, he said, an awkward attempt at conversation. Yes, that was unexpected. I studied him, this man who had once been the center of my world. Richard Miller, who had worked his way up from nothing, who had built an empire through sheer determination, who had decided early on which of his children was worthy of investment. Dad, I said, why did you take my college fund? He flinched, glancing around to ensure no one had heard. Always concerned with appearances. This isn't the place, Sarah. When is the place? It's been 10 years. He sighed, running a hand through his now gray hair. I did what I thought was best at the time. Eric needed. Eric has always gotten everything he needed and more, I interrupted. What about what I needed? Before he could answer, the room's attention shifted as Eric himself arrived, surrounded by a group of friends, laughing loudly. He spotted me and froze momentarily before making his way over. Little sister, he said, giving me an awkward hug that smelled of expensive cologne and whiskey. Didn't think you'd actually show. Surprise? I replied flatly. Our father seized the opportunity to escape, mumbling something about checking on the caterers. Eric studied me, swirling his drink. How've you been, Sar? Jess says you're doing well at some tech place. Project lead at Syntech. And you? How's working for Dad? A shadow crossed his face. Living the dream, he said, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Vice president at 32. Can't complain, but I knew my brother. Beneath the confidence and bravado, I could see the same unhappiness I'd glimpsed that night in the pool house 16 years ago. Are you happy, Eric? I asked quietly. He looked startled by the question. What kind of question is that? Of course, I'm happy. I've got everything I ever wanted. Do you? Or do you have everything they wanted for you? He drained his glass, signaling to a waiter for another. Let's not do this tonight, okay? It's supposed to be a celebration. Of what, exactly? The MBA Dad paid for? The vice presidency he handed you? When's the last time you accomplished something on your own? Anger flashed in his eyes. You don't know what you're talking about. I know about the DUI, I said, lowering my voice. I know Dad's credit cards were maxed out, and you called me for the lawyer money. I know you promised to pay me back and never did. I know a lot of things, Eric. He paled. Sarah, please. Not tonight. Jessica appeared at my elbow, as if summoned by some family crisis radar. There you both are, she said with forced cheer. They're about to start the presentation. Eric, your dad is looking for you. As Eric moved away, relieved by the interruption, Jessica gripped my arm tightly. What are you doing? She hissed. You promised you wouldn't cause problems. I promise no such thing, I replied, extracting myself from her grasp. And defining problems is entirely subjective, isn't it? The lights dimmed, and my father took his place at the front of the room, beginning a speech about family legacy and investment in the future. The projector screen behind him lit up with images of Eric through the years. My hand moved to my clutch, feeling the outline of the USB drive within. The confrontation. When I think about the Miller family legacy, my father was saying, I think about determination, about making the most of every opportunity. Values that my son Eric exemplifies in everything he does. The crowd murmured appreciatively as more photos flashed on the screen behind him. Eric in his graduation gown. Eric in my father's office. Eric on the family boat. In none of these carefully curated memories did I appear. The projector operator caught my eye, giving me a subtle nod. Our pre-arranged signal. He would take a break in exactly 2 minutes, giving me my opportunity to switch the presentation. I felt a hand on my arm and turned to find my mother. Sarah, she whispered urgently. I need to speak with you. Now. There was something in her tone I'd never heard before. Fear. She led me to a small anteroom off the main hall, closing the door behind us. Whatever you're planning, she said without preamble, please don't. I studied her, this woman who had spent decades crafting the perfect family image while sacrificing the actual family beneath it. How do you know I'm planning anything? Because I know you, she said simply. Because you're my daughter, even if I haven't always acted like it. That's an understatement. She sank into a chair, suddenly looking every bit her age. Your father is sick, Sarah. Heart problems. Stress makes it worse. Whatever you want to say to us, and I'm sure there's plenty, please, not like this. Not in public. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Dad is sick? Since when? 3 years. He didn't want anyone to know. Especially not you. Why especially not me? She looked away. He didn't want you to come back out of obligation or pity. He wanted you to come back because you wanted to, because you've forgiven us. Him, especially. I laughed bitterly. Forgiveness requires an apology, Mom. Or at least an acknowledgement of wrongdoing. I know, she said quietly. And we were wrong, Sarah. About so many things. The admission, so long awaited, felt anticlimactic somehow. Empty. Why are you telling me this now? Because Jessica saw the USB drive in your purse. Because we've all seen the way you look at that projector. Because whatever you're planning, it won't just hurt us, it will hurt Eric too. Eric has been hurting me for years, I retorted. Standing by while you and Dad treated me like I was nothing. Accepting everything that should have been shared between us. And that's our fault, not his, my mother said. If you want to punish someone, punish us. But not like this. Not in front of everyone we know. I studied her, searching for the manipulation, the angle. But all I saw was a tired woman afraid of losing what little family she had left. I'm not trying to manipulate you, she said, as if reading my thoughts. I'm asking you, begging you to give us a chance to make things right. Not for appearances, but for us. For the family we could still be. I thought of the presentation waiting on my USB drive. The emails, the recordings, the bank statements. 10 years of meticulously documented betrayal, ready to be projected for all to see. And I thought of the photo I'd found in my childhood bedroom. Eric and me at the beach, laughing together, before expectations and disappointments had created a chasm between us. I can't just pretend none of it happened, I said finally. I'm not asking you to, my mother replied. I'm asking for a chance to acknowledge it privately, to try to make amends. Real amends, not just for show. Through the door, I could hear my father still speaking, his voice rising passionately about family values and legacies. The same speech he'd been giving my entire life, never once recognizing that his actions contradicted his words. I need to talk to Eric, I said. Alone. And then you and Dad. No more public performances, no more pretending. Just truth. Relief flooded her face. Yes, anything. I nodded toward the door. You should go back. Appearances matter, right? A ghost of a smile crossed her lips. Less than I used to think. When she was gone, I pulled out my phone and texted Claire. Not going through with it. We'll explain later. Her reply came seconds later. Proud of you. Call me after. The resolution. The party continued around me, but I felt strangely detached from it all. I watched Eric charm the crowd, my father accept congratulations, my mother maintain her perfect hostess smile. The family performance I'd grown up with, now viewed from the outside. As the formal presentation ended and people began to mingle again, I caught Eric's eye and nodded toward the terrace. He hesitated, then followed me outside. If this is about the money, he began defensively. I told you I'd pay you back when. It's not about the money, I interrupted. It's about the truth. What truth? I leaned against the railing, looking out at the carefully manicured gardens below. Are you happy, Eric? Really happy? He started to give his standard answer, then seemed to think better of it. I don't know, he admitted quietly. Sometimes I think, I don't know who I am anymore. If I ever knew. Because you've been so busy being who they wanted you to be. He didn't deny it. At least they wanted something for me. They just wrote you off. Is that what you think happened? Isn't it? You were always the rebel, always fighting them on everything. I just did what was expected. Made things easier for everyone. I shook my head. They took my college fund, Eric. Money Grandma specifically left for me. They redirected it to you without even telling me. He stared at me, genuinely shocked. What? When? 10 years ago. When I decided to pursue my tech degree instead of going to Stanford like they wanted. I never knew that, he said, and I believed him. Sarah, I swear, if I'd known. Would it have made a difference? Would you have stood up for me? He looked away, and I had my answer. We've both been living the lives they designed for us, I said gently. You by following their blueprint exactly, me by rejecting it completely. But neither of us has been free. So what do we do now? He asked, sounding more like the brother I remembered from childhood than he had in years. We start over, I suggested. Not as the golden child and the disappointment. Just as brother and sister. Two adults with our own lives, our own choices. I'd like that, he said, and for the first time all evening, his smile reached his eyes. Back inside, I found my parents deep in conversation with some family friends. My father looked pale, and I wondered how I hadn't noticed earlier the signs of his illness, the slight breathlessness, the occasional grimace of pain. Mom, Dad, I said, approaching them. I'd like to speak with you both. Privately. Tomorrow. My father looked surprised, my mother cautiously hopeful. Of course, my father said. You could come for lunch. I'll be there at 1, I replied. We have a lot to talk about. Later, as I was leaving, Jessica cornered me by the coat check. What happened? She demanded. You didn't go through with it. No, I agreed. I didn't. Why not? You've been planning this for weeks. I studied my cousin, who had spent years playing both sides, reporting back to my mother while pretending to be my ally. Because revenge and healing can't occupy the same space, Jess. And I choose healing. The night air was cool as I walked to my car, the USB drive still in my purse. I wouldn't delete it, not yet. Some wounds don't heal cleanly, and some truths still needed to be spoken. But not in public, not as a weapon. As I drove away from the community center, my phone buzzed with a text. My mother. Thank you. 2 simple words that could never erase 10 years of hurt, but might be the beginning of something new. I would go to lunch tomorrow. I would tell them everything, how their actions had made me feel, the damage they had done, the years of pain I had carried. And I would listen to whatever they had to say in return. Not for appearances, not for anyone else, but for me and for the family we might still become. At my apartment, I called Claire. So, she said when she answered, "How did it go?" "I didn't do it," I told her. "I couldn't." "Because of them? Or because of you?" I thought about it for a moment. Both, I guess. Dad is sick. Mom actually apologized, sort of. And Eric, he's as trapped as I was, just in a different way. And how do you feel about that? Confused? I admit it. Relieved. Sad. I spent so long planning this perfect revenge, and in the end, I couldn't go through with it. That's not weakness, Sarah. That's growth. I looked at my laptop at the presentation I'd never given. I'm having lunch with them tomorrow. All of them. To talk. Really talk. Good, Claire said firmly. That's braver than any public showdown. After we hung up, I sat on my bed for a long time, thinking about families and legacies and the weight of unspoken truths. About the difference between revenge and justice, between punishment and healing. The email that had started it all still sat in my deleted folder, a decade of hurt preserved in digital form. I opened it one last time, read the cold, calculating words that had once defined my worth to the people who should have valued me most. Then I selected it, and for the first time in 10 years, pressed permanently delete. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was a start. What would you say to your ex-husband now? The talk show host leans forward, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against the glossy interview table. The studio lights feel warm against my skin as I consider the question. 3 months ago, I was just Eleanor Morris, the invisible wife behind a successful man. Now I'm trending on social media, running a six-figure consulting business, and sitting as the newly appointed CEO of my ex-husband's former company. Before I can answer, a commotion erupts from the audience. How about he says something to you instead? I freeze, instantly recognizing that voice. The audience gasps as Richard pushes past a security guard, looking disheveled in his wrinkled designer suit, the same one he wore to our anniversary dinner last year. I note absently, "Sir, this is a closed set." The security guard moves toward him. "Just 2 minutes," Richard pleads, eyes locked on mine. "Please." The host turns to me. "It's your call, Eleanor." I nod, curious what possible words could salvage his dignity on national television. As he approaches the stage, I notice the dark circles under his eyes, the new lines etched around his mouth, the defeated slump of his shoulders. The polished executive is gone, replaced by a desperate man. "Eleanor," he begins, his voice cracking slightly. "I've lost everything. The house is in foreclosure. Brittany emptied our accounts before disappearing to Bali. My reputation is ruined." I smile thinly. "That sounds like a you problem." I quote his exact words from the day he kicked me out. The audience snickers. Richard flinches, but presses on. "I deserve that," he admits. "But I need your help. The company was my life." "No, Richard," I correct him, leaning forward. "The company was my life. You just took the credit." As he stands there, publicly unraveling, I flash back to where this all began, wondering how the quiet, supportive wife of 17 years transformed into the woman I am today, the woman who bought the house next door for the perfect revenge. Flashback of the betrayal. "You need to move out, Eleanor. Brittany's moving in this weekend." I still remember how the kitchen island felt cool against my palms as I steadied myself. The wooden spoon I'd been using to stir our anniversary dinner sauce hung suspended in midair. 17 years of marriage, and he delivered those words with the same casual tone he might use to comment on the weather. "I'm sorry," I managed, certain I'd misheard. Richard didn't even look up from his phone. "Brittany and I need the house. You should start packing." "Brittany? Your assistant Brittany?" The 20-something blonde who'd been working for him for barely 6 months. "She's more than my assistant now." He finally met my eyes, a strange mixture of defiance and guilt flashing across his face. "I've given this a lot of thought. We've grown apart, Eleanor. I need someone who understands my lifestyle, who can keep up. I blinked, trying to process what was happening. Keep up? I've been managing your schedule, editing your presentations, and organizing your entire professional life for 17 years while raising our daughter. That's just it, he sighed as if I were being deliberately obtuse. You've become conventional. Brittany brings fresh energy. Fresh energy. The word stung like a slap. I turned back to the stove, mechanically stirring the anniversary dinner he wouldn't be eating. My mind raced through snapshots of our marriage, the small apartment we'd started in, the late nights I'd spent helping him prepare for presentations, the countless social events I'd organized to advance his career, the meals, the laundry, the silent support I'd provided while shelving my own business degree and ambitions. How long? I asked quietly. Does it matter? It matters to me. I kept my voice steady, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. 6 months, he admitted. I meant to tell you sooner, but with the Singapore deal and Lisa's college applications. Where am I supposed to go? I finally turned to face him, spatula gripped tightly in my hand. He had the audacity to look annoyed, as if my practical question was an inconvenience. You'll figure it out. You always do. Then, glancing at his watch, I need to meet Brittany for dinner. We can discuss the details tomorrow. I've already contacted a lawyer. As he turned to leave, I called after him. And what about Lisa? Have you told our daughter you're replacing her mother with someone barely a decade older than she is? He paused at the doorway. Lisa's practically an adult. She'll understand that people grow apart. After he left, I stood motionless in our kitchen, my kitchen, surrounded by the trappings of the life I'd helped build. The sauce began to burn, filling the room with acrid smoke, but I couldn't bring myself to move. 17 years, dismissed in a 5-minute conversation. That night, as I lay awake in our bed, soon to be their bed, a strange calm settled over me. This wasn't grief or shock, but something colder and more focused. I reached for my phone and opened my banking app, checking the balance of the separate account I'd maintained throughout our marriage. The account Richard knew nothing about. 2 days, he'd said. 2 days to vacate the home I'd made. But he hadn't specified where I should go. A plan began to form. At 47 Maple Street, 2 days later, I stood in my driveway, keys dangling from my trembling fingers, staring at the sold sign on the lawn of 47 Maple Street, the house directly next door to what had been, until yesterday, my home for 15 years. Mom? Lisa's voice pulled me from my thoughts. My 16-year-old daughter stood beside me, her eyes red from crying. Dad's watching from the window. I didn't turn around. Let him watch. Does he know you bought this house? Lisa whispered, a hint of pride breaking through her grief. Not yet. I smiled, feeling a surge of satisfaction warming my chest despite the cool spring air. But he will soon enough. Growing up with parents who lost everything in the 2008 financial crisis had taught me one crucial lesson. Always have a backup plan. While Richard believed I'd been nothing more than his support system, I'd been quietly preparing for contingencies he couldn't imagine. The realtor, Kate, walked up with a spring in her step. Everything's ready, Eleanor. The previous owners left it spotless. Want to go in? I nodded, squeezing Lisa's hand. The front door opened with a satisfying click, revealing hardwood floors and large windows that flooded the space with afternoon light. But what caught my attention immediately was the view from the living room window, a perfect, unobstructed view of my old house, my marriage's coffin. This is actually genius, Lisa said, running her hand along the kitchen counter. You can see everything from here. Mrs. Morris? A deep voice called from the front door. Mike, my longtime neighbor from across the street, appeared with a toolbox. Thought you might need help setting up some security cameras. I hadn't even asked him yet. Mike, you're a lifesaver. Least I can do after that stunt Richard pulled. He shook his head. The whole neighborhood's talking. Of course they were. Richard had always been obsessed with appearances, with what the neighbors thought. His father had been the same way, a man who projected success while drowning in debt, who preached family values while keeping a mistress. The apple hadn't fallen far from the tree. Let them talk. I straightened my spine. I'm done being the quiet, supportive wife who pretends everything's fine. The doorbell rang again. This time it was Carol, my colleague from work, carrying a bottle of wine and Chinese takeout. Housewarming party. Mom? Lisa suddenly grabbed my arm. That's coming over. Sure enough, Richard was marching across the lawn, his face red with anger. I met him at the door before he could reach the steps. What the hell is this? He demanded, gesturing at the house. You bought this place? Problem? I kept my voice steady, aware of our audience. You can't be serious. You're supposed to move across town, not. He ran his hands through his graying hair. This is harassment. I laughed. The sound surprising even me. Harassment? That's rich coming from the man who moved his mistress into our home and gave his wife of 17 years 2 days to pack up and leave. You're making this difficult on purpose. No, Richard, I'm making this educational. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. You wanted me gone, but didn't specify how far. Now you get to watch me rebuild my life right next door. Mom? Lisa called from inside. Where do you want the dining room table? Richard's jaw clenched. Lisa's helping you move in? She made that choice all on her own. I turned away from him. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have unpacking to do. This isn't over, Eleanor. You're right about that. I closed the door in his face. Inside, Carol was opening wine while Mike installed the first security camera. Lisa had already claimed the sunny bedroom upstairs as her second room. Did you see his face? Carol handed me a glass. Priceless. He's calling Brittany, Lisa reported from the window. She looks mad. I joined her, watching as the bottle blonde, 20-something gestured wildly in my old kitchen, the kitchen where I'd cooked countless family meals, helped with homework, and built a life Richard had thrown away for a woman half my age. You know what the best part is? I said, taking a sip of wine. The master bedroom window looks directly into theirs. Mike chuckled from his ladder. Remind me never to get on your bad side. I have to ask. Carol settled onto a moving box. How did you manage to buy this place so fast? I smiled, thinking of the separate account I'd maintained throughout my marriage. My mother's voice echoed in my mind. Never tell a man everything, especially about money. After watching my parents rebuild from nothing, I'd promised myself I'd never be financially vulnerable. Let's just say I've learned the importance of having a backup plan. Window views. 2 weeks into my new life, I discovered something surprising. The sound of Brittany's tantrums made excellent background noise for writing business proposals. You need to fire that landscaper. Her shrill voice carried through my open window. He's doing everything wrong. I smiled, typing another paragraph of my consultancy pitch. The landscaper, who'd maintained both properties for years, had already called to quit. Apparently, Brittany had demanded he replant the entire garden because the flowers weren't Instagram worthy. My phone buzzed. Carol's name flashed on the screen. Tell me you're still coming to the conference, she said without preamble. I don't know, Carol. It feels too soon to. Stop right there. Her voice turned stern. You've spent 17 years managing Richard's business contacts, organizing his presentations, and editing his proposals. It's your turn to shine. A crash from next door interrupted my response. Through the window, I watched Brittany throwing Richard's golf clubs onto the driveway. Hold on, I told Carol. The morning entertainment is getting good. Those clubs cost more than your car. Richard shouted, rushing outside in his bathrobe. Then you shouldn't have used them to meet your mistress. Brittany screamed. Oh wait, that was me. I couldn't help but laugh. Something about watching the implosion of the life Richard had chosen over our marriage filled me with a satisfaction I wasn't entirely proud of, but couldn't deny either. Carol, you wouldn't believe what's happening. Focus, Eleanor. The conference. You're pitching your consultancy idea next week. The door chimed, and Lisa walked in, dropping her school bag. Dad's golf clubs are all over the driveway, she announced, heading straight for my fridge. I see that. I turned back to my phone. Okay, Carol, I'll do it, but you're helping me prepare. We'll meet tomorrow afternoon at that new cafe downtown. After hanging up, I joined Lisa at the kitchen counter. She was doing homework, deliberately facing away from the window where Richard was now gathering his scattered golf clubs. You okay, sweetie? I asked, noticing the tightness around her eyes. She shrugged. Brittany tried to ground me yesterday. She what? Dad shut it down quick, but Lisa picked at her sandwich. She keeps trying to act like she's my mom or something. It's weird. I swallowed my immediate anger. That must be difficult. Dad's different with her, Lisa continued, her voice quieter. Like he's trying to be someone else. Younger, I guess. It's embarrassing. I remembered how Richard had changed after his 40th birthday. The sports car, the expensive gym membership, the sudden obsession with looking youthful. His own father had abandoned the family at 42, running off with his secretary. Richard had sworn he'd never be like him, yet here he was, following the same pathetic script. The doorbell rang. Mike stood there with a stack of mail. Wrong delivery again, he said, handing it over. Though you might want to see this one. On top was a credit card bill addressed to Richard. I shouldn't have opened it, but curiosity won. My eyes widened at the charges. Designer boutiques, spa treatments, jewelry stores. That bad? Mike raised an eyebrow. Let's just say Brittany's been busy. I handed him the bill. Richard is in for a shock when this arrives. Mom? Lisa called from inside. Carol's here. Carol burst in with her laptop and a determined expression. Conference prep starts now. Mike, you're our test audience. For the next 2 hours, we refine my presentation. Years of watching Richard pitch to clients had taught me what worked and what didn't, but this was different. This was mine. You're a natural, Mike said after my third run through. Richard really had no idea you were this capable? He never asked. I closed my laptop. He was too busy taking credit for my suggestions to notice where they came from. A door slammed next door, followed by raised voices. Lisa sighed, putting in her earphones. I can't live like this, Brittany's voice carried clearly. This house is stuck in the last century. We need to renovate everything. Carol rolled her eyes. How long before she drives him completely crazy? Not long enough, I replied, just as my phone pinged with a text from Richard. Need to talk about Lisa's college fund. Can we meet? I showed the message to Carol, who snorted. He's realizing managing money isn't as easy as he thought. Mom? Lisa had removed her earphones. Can I stay here tonight? They're fighting again. Of course, sweetie. I texted Richard back. Talk to your financial advisor. I'm busy preparing for a business conference. His reply was immediate. What conference? Should we tell him? Carol grinned mischievously. Let him wonder. The conference. The conference room fell silent as I finished my presentation. For a moment, I thought I'd completely failed, until the applause started. Brilliant approach to corporate crisis management, the panel moderator said, leaning forward. Your case studies are particularly compelling. How soon can you start consulting? I caught Carol's proud grin from the back of the room. I'm available immediately. 2 hours later, I sat in the hotel bar with Carol, staring at the stack of business cards I collected. 3 major companies had already scheduled meetings. I told you. Carol clinked her glass against mine. You've been the brains behind Richard's success for years. It was time people saw that. My phone buzzed, a text from Mike. You might want to get home. Drama level. Nuclear. What now? Carol peered at my screen as more messages poured in. Brittany tried to redecorate your old office, Mike wrote. Found some interesting documents. Richard is losing it. I grabbed my laptop bag. Need a ride home. The scene that greeted us was better than any reality TV show. Brittany was throwing papers from the second floor window while Richard tried to catch them. Those are confidential client documents, he shouted. Then why were they hidden in a secret folder? Brittany screamed back. Who's Amanda and Jessica and Rachel? I recognized those names. Clients Richard had tried to pursue romantically over the years. I documented every inappropriate email, every questionable meeting, just in case. Another lesson from my mother. Always keep receipts. Mom? Lisa appeared beside my car. This has been going on for an hour. Let's go inside, I suggested, leading her and Carol into my house. Through the living room window, we had a perfect view of Richard's growing panic as papers scattered across the lawn. Should we help? Carol asked, not sounding particularly eager to do so. Nope. I poured us all some lemonade. But we should probably film this for posterity. My phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Morris? This is David from WKPX Radio. We'd love to have you on our morning show to discuss your conference presentation. Your approach to workplace dynamics is exactly what our listeners need to hear. I nearly dropped the phone. The radio station wants me as a guest. Say yes. Carol squealed. This is huge. After hanging up, I turned to find Lisa beaming at me. You're going to be on the radio. Apparently, I was. Still processing, another commotion erupted next door. You've been cheating since day one. Brittany's voice carried clearly. I thought I was special. You're making a scene, Richard hissed. Good. Let everyone see what you really are. Mike appeared at my door with popcorn. Thought we might need this. We watched as Brittany stormed out carrying a designer suitcase. I'm staying at the Four Seasons, she announced. On your credit card. The declined ones, I muttered, making everyone laugh. Richard stood in the driveway surrounded by scattered papers, looking utterly lost. After a moment, he turned toward my house, catching us watching, enjoying the show. Eleanor, he called out bitterly. I raised my lemonade in a mock toast. Karma's a fascinating thing, isn't it? You planned this, he accused, walking closer. You kept those files on purpose. I kept evidence of your behavior on purpose. I corrected him. Brittany finding them was just a bonus. Dad, Lisa spoke up. Maybe you should focus on fixing your own mess instead of blaming Mom. Richard stared at his daughter, then at me, finally noticing my conference clothes. Where have you been? Building my future, I replied. Something you taught me to do, though probably not the way you intended. In that moment, watching Richard stand amid the wreckage of his choices, I felt a strange sense of gratitude. His betrayal had forced me out of the comfortable shadow I'd been hiding in for 17 years. It had pushed me to reclaim the ambitions I'd set aside when we married, when I chose to be the support system for his dreams rather than pursuing my own. My mother's words came back to me again. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to discover what you really have. The rise and fall. The radio interview changed everything. I hadn't expected the flood of emails, calls, and social media messages from women sharing similar stories, but the real drama was unfolding next door. What do you mean, frozen? Brittany's voice carried through the neighborhood as she stood in Richard's driveway. How can all the credit cards be frozen? Richard paced, phone pressed to his ear. The bank flagged suspicious activity. They're investigating possible fraud. I'm your girlfriend. It's not fraud if I use your cards. I sipped my morning coffee on the porch, enjoying the show with Carol and Mike, who'd stopped by after hearing the commotion. Actually, Carol chimed in loud enough to be heard. Unauthorized use of someone else's credit cards is exactly what fraud means. Brittany whirled around. Mind your own business, hard to do when you're providing free entertainment, Mike replied. My phone buzzed. Another booking request for a corporate speaking engagement. The radio interview had sparked intense interest in my story of personal reinvention. Mom, Lisa rushed out. Your interview video hit 100,000 views. Richard's head snapped up. What interview? Oh, you didn't hear it? Carol pulled out her phone. Let me play it for you. My voice filled the morning air. Sometimes the best revenge is simply becoming successful on your own terms. I watched my husband move his mistress into our home, thinking I'd fall apart. Instead, I moved next door and built an empire while watching his fall. You had no right. Richard stormed toward my porch. That's private family business, private? Like how you privately moved your mistress into our home? Or how you privately used company resources to pursue other women? What other women? Brittany screeched. Oh, honey, I smiled. Check his email drafts folder. He never was creative with hiding things. Richard's face paled. Brittany, don't. but she was already running inside, designer heels clicking on pavement. "You're ruining my life," Richard growled. "No, you ruined your own life. I'm just providing commentary." A crash sounded from inside his house, followed by Brittany's scream. "Who's Melissa from accounting?" Richard, a man in a suit, approached the driveway. I recognized him. David, Richard's business partner. "We need to talk about the company situation," David said grimly. "Not now," Richard hissed. "Yes, now. The board called an emergency meeting. Your recent behavior, the missed meetings, the leaked documents, they're considering a vote of no confidence." Another crash from inside. Brittany appeared at the window holding Richard's laptop. "Delete these emails or I'm sending them to everyone." "She seems nice," David commented dryly. "Real stable." My phone buzzed again. A local magazine wanting to feature my story. As I replied, more shouting erupted from next door. "You're just like him," Brittany screamed at David. "All of you disgusting businessmen." She stormed out, mascara streaking her face, clutching Richard's laptop. "Give that back." Richard lunged for it. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Brittany dodged, tripped on her heels, and the laptop went flying straight into the decorative fountain she'd insisted on installing against Ho regulations. "My files," Richard wailed. "Everything's on there." "Not everything," I called out. "I kept backups of all company documents. Standard practice when I was managing things." David turned to me, interest piqued. "You have copies?" "Of course. I was the one who actually ran things while Richard took the credit." "You?" Brittany launched herself toward my porch, but Mike stepped in her way. "That's far enough," he warned. "Eleanor," David pulled out his business card. "We should talk. The board would be very interested in your perspective." Richard's face turned ashen. "You can't be serious." Dead serious, David handed me his card. "Call my office today." I thought about my father, who had worked himself to exhaustion for a company that discarded him without recognition during the financial crisis. I thought about my mother, who rebuilt her life from scratch while teaching me to value myself. I thought about all the hours I'd spent making Richard look good, believing that supporting him was enough. No more. As David left, Brittany collapsed onto the lawn, sobbing. "This is all wrong. You were supposed to disappear." "Life's full of surprises," I replied, gathering my things. "Now if you'll excuse me, I have a magazine interview to prepare for." "Mom." Lisa appeared with her phone. "Your story's trending on Twitter." Richard stared at his waterlogged laptop, then at his crying girlfriend, then at me. "Eleanor, please, we need to talk." "No, we don't." I turned to go inside. "But you might want to talk to your lawyer. I hear the board takes fraud allegations very seriously." "What fraud?" Brittany's head snapped up. "The kind that happens when someone uses company resources for personal pursuits," I replied. "Those emails you found? They weren't just inappropriate, they were illegal." As I closed my door, I heard Brittany start screaming again, this time about lawyers and settlements. Through my window, I watched Richard sink onto his front steps, head in his hands, while his world continued to crumble. Carol raised her coffee cup. "To karma." "To karma," we all echoed, as next door the chaos continued to unfold. And that's how I turned my husband's betrayal into a six-figure consulting business. The CEO. "Actually, Eleanor," David said, standing in Richard's driveway amid the chaos of moving trucks and arguments. "That's why we're here. We've reviewed your contributions to the company over the years. Your recent success in consulting and public speaking has only confirmed what the evidence suggested." My heart stopped. "Are you saying? We'd like to offer you the position of CEO." The moving truck went silent. Brittany dropped the vase she was holding. Richard looked like he'd been slapped. "You can't be serious," he sputtered. "She's my wife." "Ex-wife," I corrected. "And I built most of those client relationships while you were busy pursuing assistants." "Mom?" Lisa's voice was full of pride. "Are you going to take it?" I looked at David. "I have conditions." "Name them." "I keep my consulting practice, and I want to start a mentorship program for women in business." "Done and done," David extended his hand. Welcome aboard. Richard stumbled forward. This is my company. Actually, David pulled out some papers. According to these documents Eleanor provided, you violated at least 15 company policies. You're lucky we're not pressing charges. You knew? Richard turned to me. You kept evidence all this time? I learned from the best, I replied. Always have a backup plan, right? This is, Brittany shrieked, storming over. I left my job to be with you. You promised me. You were a receptionist at a gym, Richard snapped. And I never promised you anything. Wrong move, Carol whispered as Brittany's face turned purple. A receptionist? She grabbed the nearest object, a crystal award I'd won for Richard years ago, and hurled it at him. I'll show you what a receptionist can do. Security guards David had brought stepped in to separate them. Neighbors gathered on their lawns to watch. Should we stop this? Mike asked, not moving to help. Nope, I replied, watching Brittany throw Richard's golf clubs one by one into the fountain. Sometimes people need to hit rock bottom. Mom, Lisa hugged me. I'm staying with you full-time now, right? Absolutely, sweetie. My phone buzzed again, another interview request, this time from a national morning show. Your story is inspiring people across the country. Carol showed me more social media posts. You're becoming a symbol for women taking back their power. Through the chaos, Richard caught my eye. For a moment, I saw recognition flash across his face, finally understanding what he'd thrown away. Eleanor. He started walking over, but security stopped him. Save it. I held up my hand. I have a company to run. As we walked into my house, leaving the drama behind, Lisa squeezed my hand. Dad always said success was the best revenge. No, honey, I smiled, watching through my window as Brittany threw Richard's prized golf clubs into the fountain one by one. Success isn't revenge. It's justice. Carol raised her glass. To justice. To justice, we echoed. My phone buzzed with a message from David. Board meeting tomorrow at 9. Ready to change the world? I smiled, replying with one word. Ready. This wasn't about Richard anymore. This was about the woman I'd always been capable of becoming. Full circle back to the TV show. Which brings me back to this moment, sitting under the bright studio lights, watching my ex-husband beg for a second chance on national television. I see it all now, Richard continues, desperation coloring his voice. Please, Eleanor, give me another chance. I'll do anything, anything. I stand up, smoothing the designer suit I purchased for myself, not the kind Richard used to pick for me to look appropriate at his business functions. How about the truth? Tell everyone watching exactly what happened. Richard swallows hard, looking at the cameras. I had an affair with a younger woman. Then I moved her into our home and gave my wife 2 days to leave. I thought Eleanor was just a supportive wife, but she was the backbone of everything I'd achieved. Without her, it all fell apart. And I prompt. And I didn't just lose my wife. I lost the best business partner I'll ever have. The woman who made me look good for 17 years while I took all the credit. The audience is silent, hanging on every word. Well, the host breaks the tension. This is certainly a plot twist. Eleanor, your response? I look at Richard, I really look at him. His expensive suit is wrinkled, his hair graying at the temples, dark circles under his eyes. The polished executive is gone, replaced by a desperate man. The company's doing better than ever, I say. Our stock has doubled since I took over. The mentorship program I started has been featured in Business Weekly. I pause, choosing my next words carefully. And you know what the best part is? Richard waits, hope flickering in his eyes. I did it all without you. The audience erupts in applause. Richard steps forward. We were a team. No, we weren't. I correct him. I was the team. You were the face. And now, I gesture to the studio audience, the cameras. I'm both. Mom? Lisa's voice calls from backstage. Your next meeting's in 20 minutes. Richard's face falls at the sight of our daughter. Lisa, please, sorry, Dad. She walks past him to hand me my portfolio. But Mom's got a company to run. The host stands up. Well, folks, you've witnessed quite a moment here. Eleanor, thank you for sharing your story. And sir, she turns to Richard, I believe security will show you out. As guards approach, Richard makes one last attempt. Eleanor, what am I supposed to do now? That's not my problem anymore. I gather my things. But here's some free advice. Start over, build something yourself this time, and remember karma's always watching. The audience cheers as Richard is escorted out. Carol meets me backstage, grinning. That was better than any reality show. How does it feel? Like closure, I reply, watching through the studio window as Richard stands alone on the sidewalk, looking lost. My mother always said there are 3 stages to rebuilding your life: survival, growth, and finally, liberation. Standing here now, I realize I've reached that final stage. The hurt hasn't completely disappeared. 17 years can't be erased so easily, but it no longer defines me. My phone buzzes. David texting about the board meeting. Ready to announce the international expansion? Mom, Lisa links her arm through mine. Can we stop for breakfast? I want to hear all about your plans for the company. As we walk to the car, I catch a glimpse of Richard watching us from across the street. For a moment, our eyes meet, and I see the exact moment he finally understands the magnitude of what he's lost. You know what? I turn to Lisa and Carol. Let's make it a celebration breakfast. I'm thinking champagne at 9 a.m. Carol laughs. Why not? After all, I smile, stepping into my new life. Success tastes sweetest in the morning. Behind us, Richard disappears into the crowd. Just another man who underestimated his wife and paid the price. Epilogue 6 months later. The moving truck pulls away from Richard's old house, my old house, as the sold sign sways in the autumn breeze. I stand on my balcony watching the new family excitedly exploring their purchase. They have kids Lisa's age, Mike notes, joining me with his signature popcorn. Much better neighbors than the drama squad. My phone buzzes with a text from Carol. Turn on channel 7 now. I flick on the outdoor TV just in time to see Brittany being escorted through an airport by security. The headlines scroll. Instagram influencer arrested in Bali for credit card fraud. Well, Mike chuckles. Karma's working overtime. Mom. Lisa bursts onto the balcony. Did you see they caught Brittany? I saw. I smile, hugging her. How are you feeling about it? Honestly? Relieved. Dad's been calling, by the way. He actually apologized. For real this time. The doorbell rings. David stands there with a bottle of champagne, celebrating the Bali news, among other things. I lead him to the balcony where Carol has just arrived. The board meeting went perfectly, David announces, popping the cork. Your mentorship program is being adopted by 3 other major companies. Speaking of which, Carol pulls up an email on her phone. You've been invited to give the commencement speech at the business school next month. I look around at my support system, my daughter, my friends, my colleagues, all gathered on the balcony of the home I'd bought in my moment of defiance. Remember when Richard said I'd never survive without him? I raise my glass. Remember when Brittany said you'd disappear? Carol adds. The doorbell rings again. This time, it's Mrs. Jenkins from down the street. Eleanor, dear, have you seen the news? That awful woman finally got what she deserved. Join us. I wave her up. We're celebrating. Oh, before I forget, she hands me an envelope. This was delivered to my house by mistake. Inside is a letter from Richard. I almost toss it, but Lisa's curious expression makes me open it. Dear Eleanor, I read aloud. I'm writing this from my new studio apartment across town. Watching you succeed while my life fell apart taught me the hardest lesson of my life. You weren't just the wind beneath my wings, you were the pilot, and I was just a passenger taking credit for the flight. I'm starting over, honestly this time. No shortcuts, no riding on anyone else's success. I owe you that much. Signed, Richard. Wow, Carol whistles. That almost sounds like genuine remorse. Almost. I agree, folding the letter. My phone lights up with notifications. The story of Brittany's arrest is going viral, with people connecting it to my recent interviews about rebuilding after betrayal. Mom, Lisa points next door. The new neighbors are waving. A woman about my age stands in what used to be my garden, looking uncertain. I wave back. I should go introduce myself, I say, heading downstairs. I'm Rachel. She smiles nervously when I reach her. We've seen you on TV. My husband and I. We're going through something similar to your story. You're kind of my hero. Come join us. I gesture to my balcony. I'll tell you the parts that didn't make it to TV. As Rachel shares her story with our growing gathering, I watch the sun setting over the neighborhood. My phone buzzes again, another text from Richard. The divorce papers are signed. You're finally free. I'm sorry it took losing everything to learn what you were worth. I don't reply. Instead, I turn to Rachel. The first step is believing you deserve better. The second step, Carol chimes in, is proving it. And the third step, I raise my glass, is succeeding so spectacularly that your revenge becomes inspiration for others. The group cheers as more neighbors join our impromptu gathering. Through the window of his old study, I can see the new family setting up their daughter's desk, the same spot where I'd planned my comeback while watching Richard's world crumble. You know what's funny? Lisa says quietly. Dad always said success was about taking control. He never realized you had it all along. I hug her close, surveying my kingdom, not just the house I'd bought in defiance, but the life I'd built from the ashes of betrayal. To new beginnings, David raises his glass. To karma, Mike adds. To Mom, Lisa smiles. To all of us, I conclude, watching the last rays of sun glint off the sold sign next door. And to the power of choosing yourself. As laughter and conversation flow around me, I think about the woman I was 17 years ago, bright-eyed and ambitious before I set my dreams aside for someone else's. I think about the woman I became, quiet, supportive, invisible. And I think about who I am now, successful, respected, and most importantly, true to myself. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just success. It's becoming the person you were always meant to be.